Ladies and gentlemen, Kirk Conover has left the building. He's waving goodbye. He is wishing everyone a happy day. Ladies and gentlemen, Chuck Malamut is here. You know, it's a huge day, huge earnings day, Home Depot, where I spent some time yesterday. I guess that's part of the reason why Chuck is going to say about them what he's going to say about them, because they're going to report big time. TJ Maxx, they have a slightly different, there's a different name for their parent company. I'm not qualified to remember what it is, but Chuck Malamut knows, and others are reporting today as well. Kirk, Chuck, and I were just talking about the fact that the financial markets are all at all-time highs this year, and at this moment, that bodes well for the party in power. And the program you're about to listen to is presented by Chuck Malamut, a financial advisor at Morgan Stanley. Chuck is in his 26th year as our official financial advisor for the Hurley in the Morning program. The information, views, and opinions expressed on this broadcast are those of Chuck. They do not necessarily reflect those of Morgan Stanley or its affiliates. They are current as of the date of this broadcast, subject to change without notice. Neither the information provided nor any opinion expressed herein constitutes a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security. This presentation is for informational purposes only. Morgan Stanley, Smith Barney, member, SIPC. Hello, Chuck.
Good morning, Harry.
Chuck, I would ask how you're doing, but I think I know. Things are going pretty well.
Well, it's interesting to hear you and Kirk in the last hour or so. But I guess the sort of the takeaway is that we're getting obviously very, very closer to that first Tuesday in November, and we can hopefully put a lot of this, what I'll describe as shenanigans behind us, and again focus on really what's important here.
Which this year, for listeners' information, is the second Tuesday, because we have this thing in our country where if the first Tuesday is the first, the election moves to the second Tuesday. It's the latest that the election can be held is the 8th. So second Tuesday, believe it or not, of November, yes, all this insanity will be over. Chuck, time is yours with your first portion of the program, which is market update.
So, Harry, as you mentioned earlier, yesterday we hit the trifecta. The Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ basically hit all-time highs. Not to throw cold water on it, but I think, Harry, one of the things you got to consider here, it's been done on very, very low volume. Which is not uncommon as far as volume is concerned during the month of August, because there are a lot of people that are in the vacation mode. They're off. They're not necessarily focusing on what's happening in the financial market. So it's something that we need to be, somewhat concerned about as everybody comes back from vacation, and as we get through September and through into October, into November. What is that? What does the political front, so to speak, have to do with the equity markets and the fixed income markets? So I think that we need to stay on track, make absolutely certain that your portfolios are tuned and fine tuned, because if not, you need to be prepared. Because there will be some point in time where Harry, if I could predict when and if and how much, it'd be a very, very simple process for all of us. But certainly, you need to sleep with one eye open here at this point in time. And who would ever believe that, I'm going to say 60 to 90 days ago, when the equity markets were just absolutely struggling, and every week we were teetering between gains and losses, for the year. S&P, Dow Jones, Russell 2000, which are small caps, NASDAQ, up anywhere from 7 to 9%, 7 to almost 10%. Pretty remarkable run we've been on here.
It's true, and isn't it, Chuck? It drops the hammer. It serves notice that you need to stay with your plan. If you've chosen Chuck Malamut to be your financial advisor, stay with your plan, because if you panicked a few months ago, look at what's happened.
Harry, great point. Actually, I heard another commentator, and it wasn't on NPR. It was actually on Fox Business yesterday, as I was traveling to an appointment, made the same statement that maybe the comment was, well, maybe we should get out of the question was maybe we should get out of the market and stay out of the market for say 90 days. Well, if you go back over historical reporting periods, then when you look at total return in the equity market, 92% of that return is derived from spending time in the market, not necessarily timing the market. So you think about it, over the last several years, we've had multiple corrections in excess of 5%. So if you were astute enough to get out and then get back in, that's exceptional. But most investors, including institutional investors, unfortunately, Harry, timing is not necessarily good. And it's one thing to get out, and then you look for an entry point. So imagine if you got out at the last correction and you're waiting for that entry point, you'd still be sitting in cash in an asset that is basically eroding because even though we, quote, don't have inflation, we actually do. And your return on cash, as we all know, is insignificant at best.
And all that, and you would have locked in your losses at the previous date.
Well, either that or let's say on the other side that you, in fact, took gains. That's a very, that's why we're all in this, and hopefully, you have more gains than losses, and that's great to take a gain. But as you and Kirk mentioned in the last hour, you mentioned off air, the fact of the matter is that you have a friend in Washington that absolutely wants to keep their hand in your pocket. So you think about either if it's a short-term capital gain, it's taxed as ordinary income. If it's long-term capital gain, it's taxed at the longer-term rate, which is now 20%. And if your earnings are above a certain limitation, then the Obama surtax kicks in as well. So now you have like gains taxed roughly 23 to 25%. So you gave up 25% of your gain and left the money, quote, on the table. I guess is the best way to describe it.
I was looking at it, and I printed it because I knew you'd be here, a few hours later. And the government is even taxing the gold, the silver, and the bronze metals.
I saw that. I think gold was 20. If I heard it correctly, 25,000 or 35,000 for the gold.
Well, here's what they're doing though. They're taxing the cash prize. See, when you win a gold medal, you get a cash prize of $25,000. They're taxing that. The gold medal is worth $600. They're taxing the $600 gold medal. The silver medal gets $15,000 cash bonus.
And the bronze was 10, correct?
And the bronze is 10. So they're taxing something like $600 and $300 and $100 and something, even for the medal themselves, which is just it's disgraceful. They train a lifetime to be elite, the best in the world. Marco Rubio, I give him a lot of credit. Senator Marco Rubio, I think it was in 2012, he introduced legislation to exempt the cash prize and the gold medal or the silver or the bronze. So because how hard they train, in many cases as amateurs, they can't earn the sponsorships that a lot of the professional athletes do, and so on and so forth, and command the salaries because they're amateur status and things. They're allowed to take things now that they didn't used to be able to take for housing and different expenses, but it's certainly not what professionals can do, and that was knocked down. So they pay, if you're in the top tax bracket, they pay 39.6% or $9,900 on the $25,000 prize.
I think if I heard correctly, Michael Phelps was going to be taxed $155,000. Is that correct?
I think that's just about right. It would be $9,900 for each of his gold medals, and then it was $5,940 for the silver medal.
I think his tax was just shy of $60,000.
Yeah. I'm trying to see here. I thought I saw.
But Harry, look, it's
just interesting, though.
And it's not to get off track here a little bit. I mean, I know that you posted a picture yesterday of your pool.
Chuck's on Facebook now, kids.
Versus
the Olympic diving pool
versus the Rio pool. So it was.
One was crystal clear, and one was like the Black Lagoon. It was dark green. I don't want to get too descriptive, but fecal matter, sludge, algae. literally when the divers, the second they hit the water, they disappeared. You know, when you usually get to judge the diver to see if they've made a really good dive and how their entry went and, you know, exactly how they went into the water, they literally disappear into a bog.
Yeah, so Harry, you know, think about it. It takes, you know, the games are awarded, 7 years in advance, correct?
Yes.
And, you know, it takes the country, the government, so to speak, and the people within the country, you know, that many years to ramp up and get ready, and then you are under this microscope for the better part of a month, we'll call it. And you think about the number of people, including the media, that are in and out over that time period. It's very, very, and the fact that Brazil, you think about it, you know, when they were awarded the Olympics, the country was absolutely thriving. And now you have a country that's besieged with, you know, severe unemployment.
Chuck, they had to take 32 tons of dead fish out of the water where they're doing the boating. So
you think, I mean, you know, it's sort of a tale of two cities here where, you know, the country has come under, has besieged with a lot of stress. You know, poorly run government. I mean, it can be, you know, it can be what's happening globally speaking, and the lack of need for natural resources. I mean, it can be, you know, lack of, you know, oil with, you know, where you have an oversupply. I mean, it can be of a number of reasons why Brazil is in the state it is in right now. But I think for the most part, I mean, you're going to get these events. You know, the robbery the other day.
Terrible.
You know, where were they? Why were they there? At that hour of the evening.
I also agree with you on that. It was 3 a.m, but they were literally, they were where they were. They weren't misbehaving. His swimming was done for the entire Olympics, so it wasn't like they were out at 3 a.m. and going to be swimming the next day. The swimming was over by then, kind of celebrating the incredible success. 3 of them, though, at a red light in public transportation, people posing as police officers approached the car and robbed them. That's Lochte, by the way, probably the second best swimmer on the Olympic team. And Phelps is so good, nobody even knows this guy. Not defending it because, you know, I always had an expression that nothing good happens at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, except me arriving to do Hurley in the morning. That's probably one of the only good things that happens at that hour. But yeah, it's sad, and there's a huge. They hired like 86,000 additional people. But you know what I was thinking about, Chuck? We had a 30,000-gallon swimming pool at the Golden Nugget, and it was always pretty much crystal clear. Occasionally it would get a little cloudy, but it was always blue, and it always passed Board of Health inspection. And hopefully there's a former inspector that listens to this program that was both somebody that I respected, and he was a nightmare in my life because whenever he came, you know, literally he had the power to shut us down. And if we were to be shut down, you know, that actually can cost people their jobs. But they have a 1 million-gallon pool, Chuck. So this isn't 30,000 gallons and one high-rate sand filter or however you want to go about, you know, cleaning the pool. But it's 1 million gallons. But they knew they had the Olympics. They had to have the ability to have enough filtration technique to have clean swimming pools. Their synchronized swimming pool was dark green, just like the diving pool. It's a disgrace. Truly a disgrace.
No, Harry, look, there's certainly been a number of missteps. And I think if you go back, you know, to prior Olympics and, you know, looked at the history, you're going to see this, you know, a number of events happened, you know, either the Winter or the Summer Olympics. I mean, I think overall.
But I think it was the economics of them really not being able to afford.
The fact of the matter is
doing.
when they spent as little as they did on the opening ceremonies, I mean, I think they spent 10% of what they typically spend.
Yeah.
And I think if they could have a do-over, they would have probably taken a pass on the Olympics if Rio and Brazil understood in advance.
Because look at Sochi, Chuck. You have all these buildings.
The state of the country.
Right. You have all these buildings that nobody ever uses again, these stadiums and all these things.
But Harry, that's not unusual. I mean, the same thing. What do you think is going to happen down here? You know, they built this magnificent golf course. You know, do you really think that course is going to get a lot of play?
No,
when it's all over.
Unless they get lucky and somebody takes it over and they put it on the tour, the international tour. But no, in general, if you look at Sochi, the stadium's empty. They use it like once or twice a year for certain things. The lodging is broken windows and horrible looking, and other facilities completely run down and unused. 19 minutes past the hour. We're going to take a quick time out, coming right back with Chuck Malamut, the official financial advisor to the Hurley in the Morning program, to me, 609, and hopefully to you, 609-383-2010 for all of your financial planning needs. Turn to Chuck, the Malamut Group. Chuck is the managing director. He leads his team. The Malamut Group at Morgan Stanley's Northfield office. Again, 609-383-2010. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Stay with us. Hey, here's a guy that will be in Atlantic City tomorrow at the 14th Annual Atlantic City Air Show 2016, Thunder Over the Boardwalk.
Hi, remember, this is Tony Lando with Hurley in the Morning. Keep listening.
We'll tie a yellow ribbon around the oak tree.
Hurley in the Morning.
With Chuck Malamut, and a reminder for all of your financial planning needs, turn to Chuck and his team, the Malamut Group at Morgan Stanley's Northfield office, 609-383-2010. Are we going to go to earnings?
Yeah, so, Harry, as you mentioned a few minutes ago, that Home Depot came, they beat expectations. Yeah. A lot of the retailers last week, including Macy's, the number wasn't great, but the market was basically overjoyed with the fact that they're going to close over 100 stores, and they're trying to improve their online presence.
Bricks and sticks are going down, aren't they, Chuck?
Well, Harry, look, it's we talked about this years ago. I don't think anyone would have thought that Amazon, could have created so much turmoil, with your traditional retailers.
Chuck, I have to say, do you use Amazon.com?
We do.
Okay, and we do too. I'm an Amazon Prime member, not a commercial, just a discussion point. Full disclosure, it's not a commercial mention here, but it's so convenient. You get everything you want. And I think another thing that they do very well, I don't seem to have the occasion to do it all that often. Margie does sometimes. If you order something that's not right, they're phenomenal about taking it back, immediately crediting your account, and away you go. I find it to be, it's almost impossible for me, from the sneakers that I wear to a lot of other things that I get, it's just so convenient to not have to go anywhere.
Certainly has come a long way from a company that started out by selling books.
Yeah.
And you think about it, there's been this gradual shift away from real estate, from the bricks and mortar type stores, and that will continue. But there's still a lot to be said about getting into a store and looking and feeling and touching and trying to understand that this is something that you want to buy.
And sometimes if you're trying things on that are cut a certain way that you're not sure if you're a medium or a large or an extra large or an exact size. So I think a lot of that comes into play. But again, you can order, and if it's not the right size, I know people that order both and then they send one back. There's a lot of ways to avoid going to the mall, and that's why we see. But although, Chuck, in some markets, malls are making a big comeback, aren't they?
There are, Harry, and it's a different type of mall than that we grew up and were accustomed to.
Yeah.
But let's get back here to the markets for a second, if we could. So, if you take a look over the last several weeks, we've mostly moved sideways. Nothing substantially higher, nothing substantially lower. I'm going to slip this through. We had a very good positive surprise with the jobs report in July. There was a fair amount of discussion with the Fed, and I think, Harry, it's very, very important to understand, the release of the Fed minutes, and we'll get to that in a second. There was a mindset that the Fed was going to increase interest rates based on the jobs report, at least on a short-term basis, but again, as you and Kirk identified, certainly at the end of the hour, the fact that we've had the economic data that we've been seeing has been, I guess the best word, kind of dismal. It's dampened expectations. So now the Fed kind of sits there and says, okay, what are we going to do? So what's going to happen is that on August 17, which is right around the corner, basically, you're going to be busy doing your air show. Mm-hmm. The Fed is going to release the minutes from their July meeting. And I think while we don't spend a lot of time looking at meeting minutes, I think it's going to shed some light on what's going to happen with rates. Now, we talked at our last session. You basically laughed me out of here. I felt had my tail between my legs, as I mentioned that there is a possibility, not a probability, but a possibility that there could be a move in September. So now, we're going to look at these meeting minutes, and what the determination going to be? Do you go in September? Do you go in December? Do you go in early 17? And whether the Fed members, when they came from this meeting, whether they're hawkish or dovish. So,
well, here's what I know: there will be no interest rate increase in September.
So the Fed,
guaranteed.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, I
2 months, less than 2 months before the election. There's no way.
I'm not going to say 100%, but I'm going to say I agree with you. Okay, because Harry, you never know, and as again, we don't talk politics, but
here's what I do know:
the timing is
liberals take care of liberals. There's no rate increase coming.
Look, if the market, continues to do well, and the economic reports that come, favor, the markets, the Fed could very well, Harry, make a move. Okay.
Want to bet a pizza?
No, because
you don't want to get me a pizza.
I want to get in my slim cut shirt, so I don't. I'm gonna,
so you're not doing it because you don't want a pizza.
No, I'd like to have a pizza, but of course I would like to have you buy me a pizza, but you can buy me something different.
How about I get a barrel of apples for cash money?
There you go.
And you get me a pizza.
I'll get you a pizza.
Here's the deal: we're two good friends. We're too much brothers. I can't take it from you because there is zero. I don't often use the term zero. There is zero chance that this will happen in September. Now, December, they will probably have already gotten their way by then. Everything's fine. It's all safe. It's in the clear. December, I wouldn't make a wager on December.
Yeah. So Harry, the other things that we need to look at as a result of the comments from the meeting minutes is the fact that what is the Fed thinking about not only financial conditions here, but as importantly, what is happening globally, including the implications of the Brexit vote. I mean, you think about what happened here.
Didn't that fall off the radar screen?
It did very, very quickly. I mean, it
just like I predicted it would.
The media got hold of
it was
a vote.
It was hysteria.
It was, and if you remember, the market down 600, the market the next day down 200, and ever since then the market, has regained all those losses and then some. So, the other thing we're going to be looking at is U.S. inflation data. That's going to be important to look at. I know that we're running it. We have quote no inflation, but I don't think that's really realistic. Is CPI, what's going to happen with CPI? Is it going to remain flat? Is it going to move higher? So those, what I'll call low volatility components, have trended higher lately. We've had decent labor and a decent consumption environment. So that could, in fact, drive inflation a little bit higher. And I think most importantly, you got to look at what's happening with the UK, as you mentioned earlier, with their job market. Everyone is pretty much predicting that, with the Brexit, impact is that there will be some sort of issues in the UK. I mean, don't be at all surprised if their economy comes under a fair amount of stress and they end up in some sort of a recession. I mean, it's pretty much inevitable what they've created for themselves.
But they do rely on their own currency, so they had that going for them. And
but let's put this in perspective. The sterling pound, Harry, yeah, as of today, is basically at a 3-year low. When they were in anticipation of the vote, of a positive vote, it was trading about 1.45 pounds to dollars. The evening of the vote, it spiked to 150.
Mm-hmm.
After the vote, the currency tumbled,
Yep.
and right now it is just shy of 1.30. So think about that kind of movement and what the implications are, if you live in the UK.
Yeah, I think short-term pain. I think long-term it's going to be just fine. Just like our markets shook it off, like the almost nothing burger that it was. I will concede it's not a nothing burger there because it was a home-based decision, and there's implications to that. But I think it's a short-term pain. Long-term, they'll be fine. I think they're going to be better off. I think the next administration is not going to threaten them and say that, you're in the back of the line and you can't do business for 10 years. I think they're going to be fine. Let's get our halftime break in. A couple of minutes late, we have one more power segment with Chuck Malamut straight ahead, the official financial advisor to the Hurley in the Morning program. We're in our 26th year doing this show together every Tuesday morning in the 8 o'clock hour. Chuck has been doing what he's been doing even longer than that, more than 3 decades. And you can reach Chuck and his team, the Malamut Group, at Morgan Stanley's Northfield office for all of your financial planning needs by dialing 609-383-2010, 609-383-2010. We're also brought to you by Congress Hall, celebrating their bicentennial 200 years, 1816 through 2016. They're located in Cape May on the beach at 200 Congress Place. It's a wonderful property. It truly feels like a vacation, just getting away for 1 or even 2 days. If you can swing a couple of days, it's awesome. You have tonight as a hot date where you can save an extra 10% off the rack rate. The 21st, 28th, 29th, 30th, and 31st this month, all 10% savings. Also, the bicentennial birthday dinners. There is one more this Thursday and one more next Thursday, and that's it. This has been all August long. This is a family-style feast. If you've ever been to Disney World and you've gone to the Hoop-de-Doo Review, it's not a ripoff of that, but that'll at least give you the flavor of a family-style feast where the food comes out and it comes out family-style, like a Carmine's, if you will, where big servings and everybody has at it. It's a lot of fun. There's an interactive musical performance that goes on all throughout dinner. Curtis Bashaw, the owner, is one of the performers. It's really cool. They have somehow brought Annie Knight back, the former owner, and that is really neat as well. And one other item, if you go to congresshall.com, the website, the Bicentennial Sweepstakes, you have an opportunity to enter to win one of 200 overnight stays at Congress Hall in cool Cape May on the beach at 200 Congress Place. Award-winning. You'll love it. When you make a reservation, dial 888-944-1816, and please tell them that I sent you Hurley in the Morning. Back with Chuck in just a few minutes. Thanks very much. Welcome back. 39 minutes past the hour. Chuck Malamut is here, our official financial advisor to the Hurley in the Morning program for all of your financial planning needs. Turn to Chuck and his team. Chuck is the managing director and leads his team, the Malamut Group, at Morgan Stanley's Northfield office. Their direct phone line, 609-383-2010, for all of your financial planning needs. Chuck, are we taking a trip to China?
Well, Harry, let's talk a little bit about corporate profits here for a second, because we've got a little out of sync here. Yep. So, we still maintain a pretty constructive outlook with respect to profits. We anticipate growth is going to remain, muted, something that you and kind of Kirk talked about most recently. Profits could return, and a lot of that is dependent, Harry, on in the third and fourth quarter, dependent upon what's happening, how quickly oil prices rebound. Now, think about it. Oil last week, I think, was up 11%. Would you ever believe, if you look back year over year, at what has happened to the to the price of crude? Year to date, the price of West Texas is actually up 3%. Okay, year over year. I'm sorry. Let me back up a second. Year over year, August of 2016, August 2015, the price of oil was up 3%. However, the price from the end of December is up, Harry, in excess of 20%. In the meantime, the price at the pump from a year ago is actually down 18%. And I think that's why you see a lot of this pressure with respect to summer driving. And the price of gasoline, unleaded, nationally speaking, year to date is actually up about 5%. So what you're seeing here is the price of crude is not necessarily trading in line with the price at the pump, and it has, in fact, the consumers have profited by having these lower oil prices.
Do you have an answer to why something I don't recall in the whole quarter of a century plus that we've done your show where that isn't passed right on? So if something was up 10%, I've always seen that they've been very fast to raise the price, but I have noticed that this time they haven't been.
Well, Harry, I think, as you know, it takes a while to get it in the system, and the fact that we had as good of a week as we did, we might have this discussion next week, and the numbers might be a little bit different. I would be very, very surprised to see no movement over the next 7 to 10 days at the price of the pump.
I'll track with everybody when we come back in a week, because right now my corner store is $189.9 for regular unleaded. And I totally agree with what Chuck said. That could easily be, what do you think, like a nickel more next week?
I wouldn't be at all surprised, Harry.
Yeah.
Maybe a nickel, 7 cents. Actually, it could even be a dime because it's what has happened in the past week or so.
If they put the whole 10% in, it would be more than that.
But so if you kind of look, with respect to China, we'll get over there for a second. The data that has been coming out of China has been weaker to date because the government has reduced their stimulus, and this is not an unknown, particularly on the credit side. There are some concerns with what's going on in China. So their economy, as we know it, by historical standards, once that stimulus was removed, has stumbled somewhat. So I think that has had a fair amount of impact, globally speaking, particularly what's happening in the international markets, that being the MSCI EFA, which has not performed compared to what's happening here in the domestic markets. I mean, if you think about it, the MSCI EFA year to date's up about 2% compared to the gains that we talked about, in excess of 8% here domestically.
Chuck, here's one I've been looking forward to chatting with you about, and that is because it sounds like Captain Obvious because we're at all-time highs in all three indices, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're in a bull market. So I'll pose it in the form of a question, even though most people would think that you would be. After all, if you're at all-time highs, you must be in a bull market, right? Are we in a bull market?
Well, Harry, look, yeah, we are. I mean, we stumbled, and that's not unusual as you continue to make, all-time highs. You want to have, it's healthy to have some sort of a pullback. And you think about we've had these, multiple pullbacks in excess of 5% year over year since 08-09, and the market has been very, 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 very resilient. So we do anticipate, a little more volatility. We haven't really seen it this summer, and as a result of that, equities usually, Harry, do not peak until after the Fed begins some sort of a tightening monetary policy. So
that hasn't happened yet.
So that gets back to your September versus December versus 2017. So after the election, we expect increased fiscal spending. We do expect some sort of tightening with respect to monetary policy. And in a dollar that moves up ever so slightly, that can still continue to provide some emphasis with respect to equities. And the fact of the matter is, a 10-year Treasury trading at a 150 level, give or take, there's not a lot of money to be made in fixed income right now.
Always great analysis with Chuck Malamut. Now, we ran out of time last week. If you can do a couple minutes of overtime, we could get this in. We punted this to this week, and that is the discussion about IPOs versus private equity.
Yeah, so Harry, I'm going to, because time is kind of short here, but I don't want to
avoid it 2 weeks in a row.
Not talk about this. But if you take a look at what has happened from the peak, which was December 1996, U.S. listed U.S. company count at that point in time was about 8,000 plus. Right now, we're about 4,300. So activity that we've seen in the IPO market it's at the lowest point that we've had since 2009, and that is now reflected in the broader U.S. market. A number of domestic companies listed on the U.S. exchanges, which I just mentioned to you, are near the lows that were put in back in 2012. So, why, when you take a look at it, where have these companies gone, and why are they so hesitant to go public? I think, to answer the second question first, I think what you continue to talk about is what is coming out of Washington and the fact that it's so very, very difficult to get any business done. And then on top of that, there is so much cash sitting, Harry, in these hedge funds and these private equity companies that take companies off of the market, so to speak. So you've had that shift, and as a result of that, that's why the IPO market, where it is today.
Great analysis by Chuck Malamut, the official financial advisor to the Hurley in the Morning program. To reach Chuck and his team, the Malamut Group at Morgan Stanley's Northfield office for all of your financial planning needs. Turn to Chuck Malamut, 609-383-2010.
Harry, thanks for having me. We'll see you next week. Good luck tomorrow.
You got it, my good friend. And thank you for your sponsorship.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it very much. You've been listening to Chuck Malamut, the following program presented by Chuck, a financial advisor at Morgan Stanley. The information, views, and opinions expressed on this broadcast are those of Chuck Malamut, do not necessarily reflect those of Morgan Stanley or its affiliates. They are current as of the date of this broadcast, subject to change without notice. Neither the information provided nor any opinion expressed herein constitutes a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security. The presentation that you've listened to is for informational purposes only. Morgan Stanley Smith Barney, member SIPC. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Stay with us. It's Early in the Morning, WPG. Talk Radio 104.1 FM, 1450 AM, and throughout the world at WPGTalkRadio.com. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, I will sign on live from the Boardwalk in Atlantic City. We have an incredible guest lineup for you for the first hour and 40 minutes to 2 hours of the broadcast. And then at 10:40, you have the tow flybys that begin the air show, and Howdy McCann Jr. will take the broadcast, not exclusively, but largely at that point. We'll pop in here and there if there's a lull, but really the air show announcer, the event announcer, Howdy, is just, in my estimation, the best in the business. And we have a really great, what will wind up being probably about a 6-hour and 15-minute uninterrupted live special broadcast event. Thunder Over the Boardwalk, the Atlantic City Air Show 2016, the 14th annual, and the home station right here, WPG. Talk Radio 104.1 FM, 1450 AM.